The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising, whether it's to find that first job, find the next promotion, or for the marketing professionals to find their next agency partner. We're doing this by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. This episode is awesome. We're talking with Travis Robertson, co-executive creative director and co-founder of Colossus, alongside his creative partner in crime and business partner, Greg Almeida, who is also a co-ECD and co-founder of Colossus. So Colossus is a Boston-based independent agency. Their design focus as well, founded by Travis, Greg, and John Balk. And they're all about emphasizing creativity as a business tool with that underdog mentality, that Boston chip on the shoulder we talk about, which I love. So some fun facts about each person before we begin. Travis Robertson is a former child actor who starred in Little Giants and a former boxer who fought in Thailand. Greg started his career as a mailroom worker at Arnold and transitioned to become a copywriter. So really cool break-in stories. You're going to love this. You're going to like their paths, the hands-on approach to their creative work, and commitment to building an agency that values disruptive, impactful advertising while offering inspiring insights for you all as you're learning to break in. They're really, really passionate about this stuff. And heads up, they want to talk with you all. So if you reach out to them on LinkedIn, they'll get back to you. And I will as well. Please leave this episode 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whatever you're listening on. It helps us continue to get amazing guests like Travis and Greg. So you're going to love this. We're going to learn about Colossus, and we hope you enjoy. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. We got Travis and Greg on the show at Colossus. We got a combo episode. I love a combo episode, and I feel like you guys are good buddies after 12 years of working together, or sworn enemies at this point. You guys can give me that vibe check and how you're feeling today, maybe this week. How are things going overall?
Doing great.
It's good, man. Thanks for having us on the show.
Thanks for having us, Gino.
Cool. So my goal is to understand Colossus as an agency, what it's like to work there, and then your stories, how you two broke in, and then your advice for the next generation. How does that sound?
Sounds amazing.
Rock and roll. Cool. All right, Travis, tell us a little about you. What are you up to? Where are you at? You got a nice background there. Is that liquor on the back?
There's usually liquor in the back, yeah. Now, we're in our new office. We just moved to the Seaport in Boston. Opened a new office about 2 weeks ago. So we're still unpacking and settling in. We keep growing. So we're outgrowing our first shoebox and our second shoebox. And now we're in a bigger shoebox.
Hey, that's a good problem to have, is to keep growing. Amazing. So Seaport, is that correct? Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the vibe like there? I'm from Chicago originally. And I've been to Boston like once or twice. So
it used to be the fishing neighborhood, like the industrial, fishing docks, which smelled like halibut and squid. But now it's a sea of bros and financial bro vests, drinking bro coffees, riding around on bro segways. So it's come up. Yeah,
no segways.
No, it's a cool neighborhood. It's actually grown up a lot in the last 15 years. There's a lot to do down here. It's kind of the hub of Boston's newer culture. So,
Gotcha. And your role is at the agency, Travis?
I am the co-executive creative director, along with my beautiful partner, Greg. And we are both co-founders of Colossus.
Co-founders, co-ECDs. So is there, who are the other partners or co-founders? Is it just you two, or there's some other folks?
It's the two of us and our partner, John Balk. John was the former managing director of, help me, Greg.
Humanop. No, not even that.
John's
Victors and Spoils. Victors and Spoils.
yeah, he was
Which is
president
Victors
of
and Spoils.
Victors and Spoils out
yeah,
in Colorado. He was at Crispin Porter for many years.
gotcha,
He's worked at some really good shops.
gotcha. So it's the three of you as partners. You got to have some sort of account person, right? If you're starting an agency, or is that not
We
true?
do. Yeah, no, there's about 35 of us here. So we've got account people, we've got producers, we've got strategists, we've got designers, we've got writers.
But John was the account guy when we started this endeavor. Travis and I were the two creative idiots, and John was the sensible business guy. We started this business, and we looked at each other and we're like, "How do we do payroll? How do we pay ourselves? How do we do any of this stuff?" So
Yeah.
John's like, "Don't worry, guys, I got it. I've done this before." So
That's the best.
it
You got
was
to
it,
have
it
that.
was it was the best. It was the best because it's otherwise, we're just kind of Googling how does one do payroll.
Yeah,
We make very formal Google searches, but
yeah, and like then it takes away from your time being creatives,
that's right, right.
and that
Which
you
is
don't want.
and that is a challenge when you own your own agency too. Like there's so much more that goes into just doing the creative, but it is the cross we bear.
Right, right, and then so you're both ECDs. Then Greg, like, can you guys tell me like your focus, your specialties? Is there like an art side of this? Is there a writing side of this, or is it just multifaceted across the board? How do you guys kind of
Um,
divvy up?
Travis is an art director and a brilliant designer. I am a
Thank you, Greg.
slightly below average copywriter. And together we have combined our forces. So it's funny. Travis has this lovely, beautiful background. I look like I'm in a padded insane asylum room. This is my office. I have not yet. I got plans. It's just not done yet. But uh, so you can kind of tell. You can also tell from our biological art direction as well. Travis is covered in tattoos, and he's barrel chested. He's the former fighter, and he looks like a problem, and I look like his accountant, which is what I used to always say. So you can kind of tell just by looking at the screens the difference between us. So
Awesome.
we've been work married since 2007.
Wow.
Yeah, we met at Arnold when we were both mid-level creatives at Arnold Worldwide here in Boston,
Yeah.
and it was love at first sight.
Was Sean McBride working there at that time?
He was.
He was,
Sean,
yeah.
Sean's our sweet angel. Shout out to Sean. We worked together for many years. Love that guy.
Love Sean. Love
Yeah.
him. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the best.
Yeah. He's been on the show. I worked at Havas before doing Breaking Entering full time, which is a part of, they're in the same holding company.
Yeah.
So worked with him a little bit. Those guys over there are funny too. I feel like Boston itself just has its own, I don't know, culture, just being like, how would you guys describe it? And like advertising, obviously in general as a city.
Yeah.
Are you guys both from there? I guess the question is, what's the culture like in advertising in Boston?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And we could spend the rest of the podcast doing that. So we'll try not to. But there's definitely a chip on your shoulder mentality about Boston. We have a running joke that if you could sum up Boston in a sentence, it would be, what do you think, you're better than me? Like it's not an FU mentality, but it's definitely like a something to prove mentality. And maybe that's because we're near New York and we're smaller than New York, and it's always been like that. And we want to be better than New York. But from the big, holding company agencies here, you've got Hill Holiday, Mullen, and Arnold, to the smaller shops like us. I think we all sort of share that same ethos.
Over the
Yeah.
course of 12 years, as Travis and I have worked together, I think for 10 of those years, we've probably shared an office. The two of us have been coexisting in the same space. And we used to have a big banner. I actually don't know where it went, that handmade flag. It said, too dumb for New York, too ugly for LA. And I think that pretty much sums up the mindset of having that chip on your shoulder. It's not true, but I mean the LA thing is definitely true. But I think it's you just kind of have that chip on your shoulder, that you have that underdog mentality. You have that I'm gonna you're not gonna hold me back. You're not gonna stop me.
Yeah.
We're going to do it. So I think, you see it a lot too in the comics that come out of Boston as well. Like if you look at the world of stand-up comedy, there is a lot of that you can pick out a Boston comic pretty fast because they have that sandpaper to them. that really kind of makes them stand out.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, I see that. I feel like there's a lot of like parallels between Boston and Chicago and
Yeah.
like the people, their
Absolutely.
style. Um, but that's another podcast. So I got to understand then, maybe we'll call this or like this actually probably should fit in our bucket of podcasts. We just started something called Creative Partners in Crime.
Mm.
We just had Dan Lucy and Chris Beresford Hill because they were
Yep.
partnered for like 7 years together. They went on
Mhm.
to do other things, but maybe we'll kind of talk about like the creative partnership, how you guys broke in. I think it kind of fits really nicely. But
Sure.
uh, but I think my main question is how long have you been running Colossus and what was the impetus? At what point did you guys come together with your third partner who's not on this show and say we got to create our own shop here? What was going on in your world?
Yeah. It segues actually really well from your last question. We worked for big mega agencies and more boutique, smaller shops for a while. And then we sort of kind of hit a wall of like, okay, you get farther and farther up the ladder. And you always assume that once you get to the top of the ladder, that people really know what's going on. But once you get to the top of the ladder, nobody knows what's going on. They're all full of crap. So, and you just get farther and farther away from the work. And what we didn't want to do was just get like extracted from the work to the point where we were managers. There used to be some really great agencies in Boston. I'm not saying there aren't now, but some people that were really doing things differently. Like if you remember Modernista, remember the Barbarian group, they were really like bringing sort of a punk rock vibe back to a town that was getting kind of sleepy. And, Modernista disbanded, Barbarian group moved to New York. It kind of like left a hole in the city where you had really small agencies, you had really big agencies, and nothing in the center. So we wanted to start an agency that was independent, an agency that was design focused, an agency that was filled with diverse perspectives of people that could really do work our way, where we could all stay in the shit together, where we could all make things together, where we didn't have just like layers of worker bees and then meeting takers. We kind of collapsed it all together. And the pandemic was the best time to do that. If you remember, like being on Zoom calls, it used to be at the beginning of the pandemic, someone would walk by in the background in like their underpants and people would freak out and be like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry about that. Now nobody gives a shit. Like nobody cares because it just like leveled the playing field.
Right.
The marble lobbies in like, the high rise buildings didn't matter anymore because we were all at home. So you were evaluated more on your creative output and your ability to collaborate with clients than you were on like, the saltwater fish tank in your lobby. So we took a year off and we freelanced to as many good agencies as we possibly could before we started Colossus. Really, really good shops that we admire and respect. Shops like the Martin Agency and Mischief and Venables. And basically, it was a really great way for us to get under the hood at other agencies too and see like, how do you do strategy? Like, how do you brief teams? Like, how do you interact? And it was awesome because it was like being paid to take a master class with agencies that you admire. And so we sort of compile all of that knowledge and also like, where we've worked before, where we've slogged in the past
Yeah.
and bring it all together to start something new.
It was a
Nice.
really
That's smart.
valuable. It was a really valuable experience freelancing at all those agencies because there's so many smart people in this industry, and when you work, time is a flat circle, according to Matthew McConaughey. So I think you only have a limited amount of agencies that you can actually experience and truly work with. So by going freelance, it gave us this exposure to all these different ways of thinking. And, there were some places that were like, oh, you do it just like that, just like we did at the other place. Other places were like, oh, wow, I'd never thought of doing it that way. So it was just really eye opening and such a great um, last experience before kicking off our maiden voyage on Colossus. So
So then it's so smart. I mean, what do you think I've been doing the past 5 years, interviewing 350 people? I'm starting my own agency the next
You're genius,
10 years.
Gino.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
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 Or I'll sell a
Covert operation.
blueprint. I'll sell a secret
Nice.
blueprint on how to create the perfect agency after all these years.
You totally could.
So then, with that's so smart to do that freelance. So you saw all these different methods. You worked with amazing people. You took your past experience. So what was the North Star then? The point of differentiation that you guys planted your flag in for Colossus? What's the reason to be?
Wow, that's a heavy question. I think we wanted to do the best work of our careers, totally unfettered and untethered by a holding company, but with like really high caliber people. I think when you get to some really, really small agencies, you're working on local banks, you're working on insurance companies. It's like the caliber of work that you're doing or the quality of client you're working with isn't exactly what you want. And when you get, to a big agency, you're working on one account. We wanted to wear a lot of hats, and we wanted to bring punk rock back to a town that's playing slow jazz. We wanted to make work that had a little friction to it, that was design focused, and we just wanted to be in it. Like, we wanted to make work. We want to get our hands dirty. I don't know. What's cool about this place too is that there is a gang mentality. I think everybody works across all accounts, and we problem solve. It's like SEAL Team 6, where a brief comes in. Not saying everybody works on every single project, but a lot of people touch things. It's a great place also if you're starting out, I think, where you can build a book quickly, because you're not, okay, I'm going to take a year and I'm going to work on Geico. I'm going to take a year and I'm just going to work on Nike, whatever it is. Like, you might be working on wine in the morning and finance in the afternoon and cybersecurity in the evening, but it's a cool breadth of clientele.
I think two of our core values that we really built the agency off of is the idea of creativity as a business tool, and the underdog mindset, which I mentioned earlier a little bit too, right? Like, where we wanted to start an agency kind of that stripped away some of the layers of bullshit that you see when you're working with holding companies and stuff. I just, for all the things that Travis had said too, there's layers and there's bureaucracies and there's all this sort of stuff. So we wanted to be big enough that we could accomplish anything we want to accomplish, but small enough that we can keep all of those issues at bay and all those variables at bay. But at the same time, like, we want to work with clients who want the kind of work that we do, which we think is so important, right? Like, I think so many times, like, we are disruptive. We are, we really value beautiful design, and we value breakthrough creative and making a brand distinct. And a lot of brands don't want some of the kind of work that we do, and it's we wanted to be in control and say, okay, yes, this is the perfect marriage. We can do great work together. Or you want something different than what we actually are good at, so maybe this won't work out so well. So having that control is really, really great, and it's proven successful so far. I mean, yesterday was our 4-year anniversary. So
nice.
we are officially 4 years and 1 day old.
Happy anniversary, darling.
Yeah, happy anniversary, sweetie. I love you.
Is it tinfoil? Is it the tinfoil anniversary? Is it Tupperware?
No, I actually, I thought it was linoleum, but what do I know? Yeah.
Nice. Love it. Well, that makes sense. We need to back it up now, I think. And we need proof. Like, so tell me about some of the work you guys have done since, starting Colossus, which is a great name. Like, real quick, how did you guys come up with that name?
We had go ahead, Charles.
No,
we had a bunch of different names. When we came up with that name, it was ironic. We thought we're going to be so small. We even bandied about, like, we're going to be Colossus, the world's smallest advertising agency. Yeah. We thought that would be kind of fun, and then we just stuck. We had a laundry list of names that we came up with, and that one was the stickiest one of all of them. And so now the bigger we get, the less ironic it is.
Right.
So
quit getting larger offices, right? Like,
that's trying not to.
We're trying.
No, we were early in the early aughts. We were invited to a pitch, and I won't say what it was, but it was a big one for us, for an agency starting out, and we were up against an IPG agency, so a large holding company agency, and we were invited into the pitch based on a previous relationship with a client, which was great. And we were just starting the agency, and they were like, "What is?" We had told them we were starting our own agency, and they're great. Why don't you pitch our business? We actually have an RFP coming up. We said, "Well, that's awesome." And they were like, "What is the name of your agency?" And we were like, "Shit! Like, we got to sound big. Like, we're going up against an agency of 600 people. We're going to be called Colossus." Because that was the biggest word we could come up with at the time. But to us, I mean, really, like,
word,
yeah, totally. To us, the idea is the Colossus, not the size of the agency. So it's become ironic, like Greg said.
the idea. Yeah, I was going to point that out. That makes sense. Okay, then, so some of the work that you guys have done since launching in the 4 years and one day, anything come to mind? What can we talk about? Like just one or two case studies. I see the gin on your shelf that I mentioned earlier. I
Yeah.
believe that was a client work for Gray Whale Gin. Is that correct?
Yeah. Last year we won a
Looks
pitch for
great.
Gray Whale Gin and for Cantera Negra Tequila. They're both owned by Deutsch Family Wines, who also own Josh, the social media darling, the wine.
I'm off
So
that
we
Josh.
just, oh, you got to get a bottle of
Mm.
Josh. So we just finished a campaign for Gray Whale, which is pretty awesome. We shot that uh, all using XR and LED wall technology, which was really cool. And then Cantera Negra Tequila, we just finished and launched a campaign that was pretty rad that we shot in Prague with active volcanoes and live horses and pyrotechnics.
Oh
Two
yeah.
very different projects, but very
Mhm.
fun.
Nice. Nice. So a lot of
We,
it is like recent like connections that you've had in past lives, and then also now that your brand is spreading as Colossus, people like are starting to understand who you all are in the marketplace.
Yeah, we've been lucky to get a lot of press for our work, which is great. But a lot of our clients come to us from word of mouth recommendations, which is amazing. Which is, I think, a testament to the service and the creativity and the work we do for our current clients that they will recommend us to other clients, which is fantastic. Um, but yeah, we operate in all kinds of spaces. I mean, sticking with the booze category too, we did a lot of work for or we've done or doing a lot of work for Archeroos Wines, which is a wine company that comes in cans. Um, we They have a celebrity spokesperson. Stop me if you've heard this before. A beverage company, an alcohol with a celebrity spokesperson, but with Elizabeth Banks. But we've tried to take a slightly different approach with her involvement, and putting wine in cans is kind of an odd concept anyway. You're not really supposed to do that, so we kind of take that same tone with the advertising as well. Like we've done some really funny spots with her, but we also did a program where they wanted us to launch a rewards program. So we came up with this idea where if you order $100,000 worth of wine, no, $10 million worth of wine, we would send you a free poisonous snake. It was the whole thing. It was ridiculous. A lot of poisonous snakes. The snake lovers on Reddit did not like us, but it was
neither did
fun.
the lawyers. That was a fun one to
Yeah,
get through the lawyers on that one.
yeah, yeah.
You spend millions of dollars, you got a free poisonous snake.
Mhm.
What's the background on that? What's the
Well, they
rationale?
wanted to. They wanted to. We try to do everything unconventionally with this brand, and they wanted to start just like a regular standard rewards program, which was like get $5 off, spend $50 in wine, get $5 off. So we thought, well, what if you give it a spin, and why don't we create a buzz and make that feel bigger and get some more, incremental media and more eyes on it, and let's do something a little wilder. Let's do something.
Mhm.
Let's offer to give away people poisonous snakes. So I think it was if you bought 10,000 cases of wine, which turned out to be $10 million or whatever it was,
Yeah, yeah.
then we would mail you poisonous. It did a whole web experience, and we came out with a scripted apology. It was very weird but
We,
fun.
we launched it. We launched it around the Super Bowl, and the brand couldn't afford the backstory. Is the brand couldn't afford to do a Super Bowl spot. So the headline was, "If you buy a certain amount of wine, we will send you a free poisonous snake." And it was basically about how much press can we garner with, is this brand
Yeah.
serious? And it took off. It was all over social media. It was all over the headlines. At the tail end of the apology from our legal department, we launched their actual rewards program, and it ended up breaking every KPI they had.
Perfect.
So it's just a clever way of wedging ourselves in there.
That's the part I left out. That last part right there. That was the important part.
Very important. And I'll let
Yeah.
everybody rewind and listen to that again. And welcome back. The I just had a student that is he's about to try to break into advertising. His question was, how do you, as a creative, how do you understand what type of work will be press worthy and will break the mold and get buzz around it? And that's a large question. I responded with, well, you have to know what the ad trades are covering, but then also what's going
Mhm.
on in the world. A lot of the time, from a journalist standpoint, it's like timeliness, or it's just completely absurd. Um, like the timeliness maybe around the Super Bowl, a lot of buzz around that could have been a rationale or reason for that. I'm not sure. How would you guys answer this question? Because I'm not the expert on creating work that
Yeah,
breaks through.
I guess as industry professionals and tradespeople, we are often delighted when our work is picked up by the trade, which is great. And I love being in the no knock to the the trade press. Love what you guys do. It's part of our lifeblood. And at the same time, it is like a cyclical way of talking to ourselves. When
For
you
sure.
can break out of the trade press and into like press,
Right.
out into the cultural lexicon, to me, that's so valuable to the brand, because now you're in dialogue with consumers, which
Yep.
I love. And I think you need both.
Yep.
It's not either or, but I
Yeah.
think it's a more successful cultural conversation if we're outside of the trade. But I've always loved, and we, sometimes at Colossus use the approach that Crispin Porter made famous, Alex Bogusky made famous, where their creative brief, basically, like when creatives would present ideas, they would present it through the lens of a PR headline. So like, why would I care? So sometimes when creatives bring work to us, it's a page long write up, and you're like, it's just too long. Like what is the idea? If you can
Yeah,
condense that idea into a press
two
headline,
sentences.
it's gold. You know.
Yep.
Yeah,
And then thinking about which you mock it up, actually mock it up, like put it
Yeah.
into USA Today or put it into the New York Times. And
we do
then
that all the time.
why that publication you have to think about too. It's
Right.
like what
Yep.
brand does the brand specifically, what publication should they be in or featured in?
Right.
So I don't know if
Better
Breaking
Homes and
Entering.
Gardens.
Yes, yeah. Breaking Entering went super famous beyond Ad Age and Ad Week and the other ad trades. I would want it to be in maybe like the Chronicle of Higher Education for breaking the norms of how people like study advertising. Could be interesting. It's
Yeah.
niche, but it's also targeted. You might want to think bigger, but that was me just riffing there.
No, it's totally true, and
Yep.
it's a hard thing to learn, because I think is it majority that says, like, it's culture that makes culture. Our culture makes culture. Like, it is totally true. There's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with working in advertising. It can be like the soulless schlocking of salad dressing all day, but it can also be that we influence and steer culture and have meaningful impact on those things. It's probably both, but I think that's the culture leans on culture, and so those two things I think are really interesting.
Love it.
That's a really nice answer, buddy.
Hey, thanks, man.
Crushed it. So we'll start with Greg then. Let's kick it back and how you broke into this business. And you're wearing a Bears hat. You're living in Boston. Maybe we'll start off with that real quick. What's going on with that? I'm a Bears fan myself.
Yeah. So, born and raised in Boston. I've stuck around town. Been, been here my whole career. Had a really weird journey getting into advertising. I was not an ad school kid. I I went to school thinking I was going to be a doctor. I went to undergrad. I was pre-med. Graduate, did all the orgo and mole cell and all that stuff. I was an EMT. I did hospital work, volunteer work in hospitals, and I kind of hated it. Saving people's lives. Ugh. But it was not what I wanted to do. My passion was actually comedy. Like, I wanted to be a stand-up comic. So I would
Which is
take
ironic, because he's not funny at all.
not at all, in no way, shape, or form. So I would actually, when I would be studying and all that sort of stuff, I would take breaks and I would write stand-up, or I would write sketch comedy and all that stuff. So I was about to take the MCAT and apply to medical schools, and I was like, I can't do it. I had this like moment in my life where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to be wondering what it would have been like if I pursued a more creative field. So I told my parents. They were pumped. No, they weren't. They were not happy. So I went out and did stand up for a while, open mics and doing odd jobs, and I realized quickly that I was going to starve to death, because you don't really make any money as a stand up comic. So I tried to figure out how to monetize this skill or lack thereof. Thank you, Travis. And try to apply it to something. And I was like, oh, advertising, that seems pretty easy. I mean, it's funny ads. I'll do that. So I had no idea what I was doing. And this sounds so cliched and so stupid, but I called Arnold in Boston because they were doing all the Volkswagen ads at the time. They were like super hot shop. And I looked them up, and I called them and I said, hey, I want to be a writer. And I was speaking to HR. This is back when people like answered phone calls and stuff. And then the woman in HR, I don't remember who it was. She was lovely. She said, well, you just need to send us your book. And I said, sure, I got tons of books. What book do you want me to send you? And it sounds so stupid and so lame, like a really lame joke, but that's how ignorant I was to the world of advertising. And then she's like, oh, sweetie, you haven't done this before, have you? So she actually spent some time with me on the phone and kind of talked to me a little bit about what needed to happen. So I started literally all the way at the bottom. I ended up getting a job at Arnold, but in the mailroom. And I'm one of those guys that started in the mailroom and like worked my way up, became a receptionist and became, a bunch of like low level internships and like really grinded my way while teaching myself advertising along the way. Devouring Luke Sullivan's book, Hey Whipple, obviously classic. How to Put Your Book Together and Get a Job in Advertising by Maxine Patro. Like these are books that I would read and reread and reread and like hand draw my portfolio and like write clever headlines and do all these things and try to claw my way up. And then I ended up getting into grad school at Emerson to kind of learn a little bit more about advertising and made connections and all that sort of stuff. But it was quite a grind to get. So it took me like 10 years to really get, no, 7 or 8 years to really kind of get an opportunity to show what I could do and to like truly learn the industry.
From the from the moment that you realized you wanted to be in advertising to actually being a copywriter, it took 7 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, yes. It was to be officially hired as a copywriter. I got a job I was working at Staples in-house corporate office as a catalog copywriter. That
Hell
was my
yeah.
first job. Yeah.
Okay.
And because
This
I
this ergonomic chair soothes
well,
the lower
yeah. So
lumbar.
this was back when there were catalogs, right? People would like order from the catalog and stuff. And because, the biggest mistake I made coming up was I would try to make everything funny, right? I'm like, I love comedy. I want to make everything funny. So I would get yelled at all the time because I was trying to make the catalog copy funny. And they're like, just write about paper clips. Stop trying to make a joke about paper clips. Just write about the product.
Yeah.
But I eventually caught the eye of the in-house creative director there. Shout out Teresa Hurd. She's great. And she kind of took me under her wing and started to give me other more creative projects. And then I leveraged that and I ended up going to Mullen. But back then they had like a direct and a general side. Like one side did all direct mail, one side did sort of brand level work. I get on the direct side. Again, I was blissfully ignorant this entire time. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like, all right, I'm just going to keep writing and I'm going to keep working hard. I'll outwork anybody, but I'm just going to keep going. And then eventually I got my break. I went into general at Mullen, and then that was sort of never looked back after that. But
Would then, like, looking back, if you can talk to your younger self, what would you have said to yourself to expedite that process?
um, talk to more people, slow down a little bit, get a lay of the land, um, try to make more connections. It was it was hard as a creative without really a book. It's just like, just believe in me. Like, look, I can do this. So I think really just kind of taking a minute and because again, I just kind of kept it was very serendipitous that I ended up. It was sort of like right place, right time, the right people seeing my work. I think just taking a minute and finding somebody who would be willing to help me expedite the process. And I gave a shout out to Teresa Hurd, and she was kind of that person. It took me a long time to find her, and then she believed in me, and she really helped me out a lot. And then there were other people who, when I went to Mullen, this guy Tom Kelly, a brilliant writer, kind of took me under his wing and really helped me out a lot. And So I think finding the people who can help you and teach you and show you the ways to do things and the ways not to do things, the ways to think about assignments are so important. Which is one of the biggest pieces of advice. It's going to kind of catapult off of your original question, but the biggest piece of advice I give to kids coming into the business now is to, when you take a job, to look at the work that the creative director you're reporting to is actually doing, because they're going to help shape and mold you as a creative. So if you don't like the work that they're actually putting out, don't work for them. Like, even if the name on the outside is like, it's Wyden or whatever, great. Obviously they're amazing. But if the person you're going to be working for is not the kind of work that you want to be doing, seriously consider, trying to work for somebody else within that organization or whatever, and try to find that right fit for you that's going to help you grow as a creative.
Totally.
Sorry, I
Totally.
kind of answered my own thing on top
No,
of your question, but
great. No, you crushed it. Travis,
yeah.
want to give you that same question then. Like, how did you break into advertising? When did you realize you want to make ads for a living? And do you regret it?
No, I regret it every day.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't regret it. My career path was really weird. It was really, really odd. So I'll try to be brief, but when I was 11, I saw an ad in a newspaper for a Steven Spielberg film that they were casting for a football movie. It didn't have a title at the time, but I ended up sending a VHS tape off to Amblin Entertainment. I got cast in the movie Little Giants. It was like a Pee Wee football movie. It was Janusz Kaminski's first film with Spielberg. So I was a child actor for a while. I did like a ton of Nickelodeon shows. I was on Law and Order for a little bit. Did a movie called Now and Then. I was like, yeah, this is really fun. I like doing this. I was atypical in that my parents didn't want me to do it. I wasn't pushed into it by, like a film mom or anything. But I saved every penny I ever made, and with the intention of going to film school. So did the child actor thing, did voiceovers for like Nintendo games, did radio spots. I started boxing when I was living in New York. Got my golden gloves when I was a teenager.
Damn.
Started boxing, started training, became a fighter for a while, moved to Thailand, fought Muay Thai over there for a bit. I worked in kitchens because there's no money in fighting, same as stand-up comedy. So I worked in kitchens as a line cook where I could around Boston. I went to film school at Emerson, got a degree in film production, worked as a bouncer, worked as a bartender, worked as a server. I framed houses in construction. I was a cable guy for DirecTV. I was kind of just like, how do I find my place in this world? I just like thirst to learn things in a very short attention span. So I went from like job to job to job, and I was like, nothing is like sticking. Like, I'm passionate about a lot of things. I like learning a lot of things. And I was trying to figure out like, okay, what is the next, what's the next thing? My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we had thrown a dart at a map. We were like, let's get out of Boston for a little bit. And it hit Georgia. So we're like, I don't know anything about Georgia, change of pace. Let's go to Georgia. So we go down there and I learn about Miami Ad School, which at the time was Portfolio Center. And I was like, this is really cool. So I go over there and start talking to them. And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is awesome. Advertising to me was the only thing where you don't throw out all the things that you've already done and move on to the next thing. You use all of that stuff. All of that matters. It's really, really interesting. So I went there and, got my degree in art direction and design. Was hired out of school by an agency called Breensmith, which is now called Chemistry. So I was employee number 3 or 4, I guess, technically for those guys. Shout out to Tim Smith and Chris Breen. Just really great guys who put up with me as a young creative. And then I worked for a small agency called Fort Franklin in Boston. The age old question for kids coming out of school is like, do I work for a big agency or do I work for a small agency? And I think the answer is both. Like, go figure out what it's like to work in both. I chose the small agency first, stayed there for a few years, and then went to Arnold. And Arnold was great, and I have such a warm spot in my heart for that agency. It's where I met Greg. They gave me a shot working on Jack Daniels, and Jack Daniels was it's one of those accounts that I think every creative wants to work on at some point. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Cadillac, Nike, Jack Daniels, Coca-Cola, Guinness. Like there's like really iconic brands.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked our way up, working on Jack Daniels, won a bunch of awards, really cut our teeth on that. And that's where we learned that craft matters. That
Mm-hmm.
craft really, really matters. And yeah, that's how I got into the industry.
Incredible. Yeah. I love when people go through different like careers or jobs before they find advertising. It just makes sense that being curious like that, like you said, it sticks with you. All those experiences make you a better advertising professional.
Yeah.
And so whenever somebody is trying to break in, I say you just have to figure out that narrative. If you had a bunch of jobs, or it took you a while to find your footing, there is a way to talk back and find those insights along the way to make you sound like a better art director, a better copywriter. You can use all of those experiences in those interviews and those calls.
It
So
doesn't make you sound like a better art director. You are a better art director. Like
Yes.
you have perspectives. You have the ability to wear different hats. If you get a brief for something that's, I don't know, construction equipment, you know who you're talking to.
yeah,
And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times it's the strategist or the brand planner, trying to help like guide the creatives towards like, okay, here we're talking to a luxury audience. Here's how you do that. But if you've lived that, if you've worked in that space, that's the most valuable thing in the world.
totally.
When we interview people for jobs too, like just a bit of advice, like I often find that people bury that. They like shove it in the past. And I'm like, oh, what'd you do before advertising? And they try to kind of like mold their previous experience. Like, oh, I was a usher at the Museum of Art. Like I'm like, okay, cool. But what did you do before that? I interned at a production company. I'm like, I know, but like, did you work at Dippin' Dots? Did you drive Uber Eats? Did you work at Foot Locker? Like,
Yeah,
I guess I'm walking through the mall at this point, but like, like all of that, I think is really interesting. That makes you who
totally.
you are today.
I mean, that's a really good point too. Even when we ask people, like, what are you into outside of advertising? Not only what have you done, but what are you into?
Mhm.
And I think people think of it as a throwaway question, but for us, it's not a throwaway question. Tell me the music you listen to. Tell me the movies you love. Tell me the things you like to do on a random Saturday afternoon. All of that is really helpful when we try to understand like who you are as a person and how you think. You know, when we interview somebody, I I want to when I look at a book, I want to see how you think. I want to see how you solve certain problems. I want to see, I love the art of the headline as a writer. You don't see headlines in books anymore, or it's like a dying art. I want to see how you told a story in 7 words. Like that is such a fundamental skill for doing this job as a writer in particular, that I just I want to know about you, the person, and how your mind works.
Totally. Totally. And when you're interviewing too, it's like you can ask those questions back, like understanding who your ECD or your CD will be. I wrote a blog about really good questions to ask, and like one of them that I'll talk about now, it's like, who's your favorite late night host, or who's your favorite stand-up comedian? That would be a good question for both of you, just to get understanding like what you watch, what you're listening to, what do you like in general, to get a good grip on them too. So it goes both ways in those interviews.
That's right.
That's a
Yeah.
good point. I think the same when we're talking to clients about like doing a brand partnership or a campaign or an RFP or working together. Like it is a two-way street. It's a relationship that we're going to be in. Like we're going to be in the trenches together for the next 2 years. Like who knows? Same thing when you're interviewing at an agency. Ask questions back to them. Don't just
Hmm.
get like grilled by the HR people or the creative director. Like you need to fit in there and feel comfortable there too. So I love it when we interview people and they've got just as many questions for us as we do for them.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
it's actually a little bit of a red flag when they don't have any questions. When we're
Oh,
like,
for
"Do you have any
sure.
questions for us?" And they're like, how are the snacks?" It's like, ugh, like that. I
Yeah.
mean,
Killer.
they're awesome. The snacks are great, but that's
Yeah.
not a great question.
Yeah. Yeah. How can people reach out to you both if they do have more questions? They do want to reach out and say hello.
They can't. Stonewall, don't talk to
Yep,
us.
That's the
yep.
best.
No
That's the
eye
best.
contact. Don't even look at us.
No, we're happy to talk to people. A lot of people have gone out of their way to help us in our careers too.
Yep.
And I think like um, the more people that you talk to will talk to you. I mean, people are more willing to talk to you than you think than you actually think. You can email us, Travis at wearecolossus.com or Greg at wearecolossus.com. You can follow us on social, follow Colossus on Instagram, on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yep. Yeah. I
Golden.
mean, I truly would not be where I am without the help of, I could name 6 foundational people that helped me get here. And that's just off the top of my head. But I think the power of this community and people helping each other grow is so important. And, I had a mentor once when I was in college, this guy, Jim Roween. I used to call him my advertising Yoda. He got me my first 2 internships. And he always said to me, he's like, I believe in you. I believe in your talents. And I will help you in any way, shape I can. But you have to make me one promise that you will always help kids your age. This is back when I was younger, break in because you understand how difficult it is to break into this industry. So if you promise me that you will always help people get in, then you have my promise that I will always help you. And that always stuck with me. Like I thought that was really, it just spoke to his character and just the power of this network and helping each other out. So, we love speaking to people and helping people out, and because we wouldn't be here without others. So
I love that.
And if I could like give a message to my former younger advertising self, I would say, don't be such a bulldog. Like when you get into the industry, it's like it can feel really cutthroat. And I think like when I was younger, it's competitive, and like there is like, especially when you're in a shop with a lot of creative teams that are going up against each other for something, it can feel like you're competing against your own people. But helping each other along the way is something that's learned for sure. And we're happy to help people now. So like reach out. Would love to say hi.
That's great advice. That's great. All right, gentlemen, I know we can talk for more, but I will leave it to the listeners to reach out and say hello and follow you all. I'm excited to see how you guys continue to grow and all the success you'll achieve in 2025. So thank you again.
Thanks for having us, Gino.
yeah, thanks, Gino. Really appreciate it.